Hello, dear students. I, Mrs. Rajashree Naik, welcomes you again in online lecture series arranged by Gokhale Education Society's B.Y.K College of Commerce, Nashik. In the last online lecture, we have covered meaning of public finance and private finance and differences between public and private finance. Today, in this lecture, we will study the next part of chapter number 8, Public Finance in India. So students, in this lecture, we are going to study about structure of public finance at a glance. In that, public expenditure, classification of public expenditure, and reasons for the growth in public expenditure and expected questions. Now students, see the chart, which shows you the structure of public finance at a glance. You can study the chart from our textbook as well. Now let us study about public expenditure. Public expenditure is that expenditure which is incurred by public authority, central, state, local bodies for the protection of their citizens, for satisfying their collective needs, and for promoting their economic and social welfare. Just as consumption is the end of all economic financial activities of the state, it is aimed to provide maximum socio-economic welfare of the society. It is considered to be the backbone of economic development of a country. So public expenditure is considered to be the backbone of economic development of a country. Public expenditure is an important part of public finance. During past few years, there is a trend of continuous increase in public expenditure in almost all the countries of the world. For instance, during last few decades, the volume of public expenditure has increased 10 times in France, 6 times in England, 5 times in America, 2 times in Japan, and above all, 150 times in India. 150 times in India. Till 20th century, the majority of the governments had adopted a policy of laissez-faire. Under this policy, the functions of government were restricted to the obligatory functions. But the modern governments not only perform the obligatory functions such as defense and civil administration, but also perform optional functions for promoting social and economic development of their countries. Therefore, study of public expenditure is an important part of study of public finance. Now, public expenditure has a vital role to play in the developmental process of a country. It can promote development as follows. Okay, so first point, by building economic overheads. By building economic overheads, for example, roads, railways, irrigation, power, etc. The tempo of economic development can be boosted. Similarly, undertakings of social overheads such as hospitals, schools, etc. are also part of a great help. Okay, so second point, by bringing about balanced regional growth, public expenditure can channelize the allocation of resources in a proper way and avoid lopsided development and correct regional imbalances. More public spending may be incurred in the backward regions to uplift their economy. Now, third point, by augmenting the development of agriculture and industry. Fourth, by developing mineral resources, coal and oil. Fifth one, by rural electrification programs. So students, the major objects of public expenditures may be summarized as under. Number one, administration of law and order and justice. Number two, maintenance of police force. Number 3, maintenance of army and provision for defense goods. Number 4, maintenance of diplomats in foreign countries. Number 5, public administration. Number 6, servicing of public debt. Next one, development of industries. Next, development of transport and communications. Next one, provision for public health. And the last one, or the last object, creation of social goods. So the next part is, let us study about classification of public expenditure. Different economists have classified public expenditure on different bases. We shall now study some of the important classification of public expenditure. Number 1, revenue expenditure. Now the meaning of revenue expenditure. Revenue expenditure of the government is for incurred carrying out day-to-day functions of the government departments and various services. It is incurred regularly. Okay, what is the meaning of revenue expenditure? Revenue expenditure of the government is for incurred carrying out day-to-day functions of the government departments and various services. It is incurred regularly. For example, administration cost of the government, salaries, allowances, and pensions of government employees, and medical and public health services, etc. Okay, now next classification, capital expenditure. Now see the meaning of capital expenditure. Capital expenditure of the government is expenditure for progress and development of the country. For example, huge investments in different development projects, loans granted to the state governments and government companies, repayment of government loans, etc. Okay, now next classification, developmental expenditure. Developmental expenditure is productive in nature. Okay, it is productive in nature. The expenditure which results in generation of employment, increase in production, price stability, etc. It is also known as developmental expenditure. For example, expenditure on health, education, industrial development, social welfare, research and development, etc. Okay, and now next classification, non-developmental expenditure. On the other hand, that government expenditure which does not yield any direct productive impact on the country is called non-developmental expenditure. Okay, what I said, on the other hand, that the government expenditure which does not yield any direct productive impact on the country is called non-developmental expenditure. For example, administration cost, war expenditure, etc. And these are unproductive in nature. Okay, now students, it is observed that there is a continuous growth in public expenditure in a developing country like India. So we are going to study about reasons for growth in public expenditure. It is observed that there is a continuous growth in public expenditure in a developing country like India. The rising trend of public expenditure in modern times may be attributed to a multitude of causes. The major causes of public expenditure growth may be stated as follows, or in other words, we can say that let us study some of the important reasons which are responsible for increase in public expenditure. Okay, so first point, increase in the activities of the government. As mentioned earlier, the modern government performs many functions for the social and economic development of the country. It is also known as welfare state ideology. What I said, it is also known as welfare state ideology. The modern state is a welfare state. It aims at promoting the economic, political, and social well-being of citizens. Okay, and for this purpose, it has to undertake many functions and services. In Wagner's opinion, the pressure for social progress may be regarded as the root cause of the relative growth of public expenditure in modern times. Very important. In Wagner's opinion, the pressure for social progress may be regarded as the root cause of the relative growth of public expenditure in modern times. Due to the pressure of social progress under the welfare state theory, in addition to the maintenance of law and order, government participation in the economic field for the provision of some goods such as communication, education, medical facilities, etc., which was necessitated. Apart from performing all functions, more efficiency and a larger scale, a modern state constantly undertakes new functions and added responsibilities day by day. And this leads to increase in public expenditure. Okay, now next second reason, rapid increase in population. Population of developing countries like India is increasing fast. In 2011 census, it was 121.02 crores. And as a result, the government has to incur greater expenditure to fulfill the needs of the increasing population. Population explosion has been a major contribution to the growth of public expenditure with the growth in population. If not proportionately, then at least to a greater extent, the public services have also to be increased. A high growth of population naturally calls for increase in public expenditure, as well as state functions are to be performed more extensively. Rising population also poses various problems in poor countries. The state will have the added responsibility of solving such problems as food, unemployment, housing, and sanitation. Further, overpopulated countries like India will have to check the population growth. The state has therefore to spend more and more on family family planning program campaigns every year. For example, more schools, hospitals, etc. have to be provided to meet additional needs of the growing population. Now, third point or third reason, growing urbanization. Spread of urbanization is a global phenomenon of the day. This leads to increase in the government expenditure on water supply, roads, energy, schools and colleges, and public transport, sanitation, etc. An increasing shift of population to the urban areas has taken place. New cities have come up and old cities are growing. Growing urbanization means huge expenditure on the provision of civic amenities and infrastructure like power, transport, communication, roads, and so on. The per capita cost of water supply, health facilities, traffic service and control, public protection has been rising without any limit. The governments have also to make provision for additional hospitals, schools, colleges, roads, street lights, community halls, or playgrounds, parks, etc. And also for the distribution and control of essential commodities. All these have been responsible for increase in public expenditure. Okay, now fourth reason, increasing defense expenditure. In modern times, defense expenditure of the government is increasing even in the peace time due to unstable and hostile international relationships. The tremendous growth in public expenditure may also be attributed to wars and threats. In modern times, in the Second World War, countries like England incurred heavy war expenditures amounting to 15 million euro per day. What I said, in the Second World War, countries like England incurred heavy war expenditures amounting 15 million euro per day. Wars and threats of war and the consequent defense needs compel governments to spend more and more on the production of war goods. During past decades, maintenance of defense forces has become very costly. Moreover, due to arms race and nuclear arms, almost all the countries have to spend huge amounts on defense preparedness. The modern governments have therefore to spend a lot on the manufacture of war weapons and maintenance of armed forces. Over the years, there has been a tremendous change in the techniques of war, and now new weapons of war are required for the army. So, in almost all the countries of the world, the defense expenditure has been on the increase. This also includes expenditure on the training and maintenance of army, air and naval forces, purchase of conventional and nuclear weapons, and both offensive and deterrent purposes. Okay, now fifth reason, spread of democracy. Majority of the countries in the world are democratic in nature. A democratic form of government is expensive due to regular elections and other such activities. And this results in the increase in total expenditure of the government. The recent growth of democracy and socialism everywhere in the world has caused increase in public expenditure. A democratic structure of the government is inevitably more expensive than the other government, or we can say the totalitarian government. In India, democracy has certainly become a costly affair. Okay, I said in India, democracy has certainly become a costly affair. Expenditure on elections and by-election is increased. The number of ministers and executive officers has been also increasing. Further, the ruling party has to fulfill its promises and launch upon new policies and programs to achieve socialist objectives and in order to create a favorable image in the public. And this also requires increasing state expenses in order to provide new amenities and opportunities to the people at large. Okay, now next reason, inflation. Just like a private individual, the government has to buy goods and services from the market for the spread of economic and social development. Normally, prices show a rising trend, and due to this, the government has to incur increasing costs. With the rising prices, the government has to keep on increasing public expenditure. For what? To carry out its functions and maintain the supply of public goods intact. During inflation, the government has to pay additional DA to its employees, which obviously calls for extra burden on public expenditure. So next reason, that the reason for growth in public expenditure, industrial development. Industrial development leads to an increase in production, employment, and overall growth in the economy. Hence, the government makes huge efforts for implementing various schemes and programs for industrial development. And this results in increase in government expenditure. The Industrial Revolution has been responsible for the rapid industrialization of certain economies and also for political and social transformation in those countries. It has created new problems in the areas of labor relations, regulation of industry, protection of consumers, distribution of income and wealth, and economic security. Okay, these problems have arisen because of the new forces released by the industrial development. Consequently, the governments have to spend more on solving these problems, which has led to an enormous increase in public expenditure. And the eighth reason, disaster management. Many natural and man-made calamities like earthquakes, floods, cyclones, social unrest, etc. are occurring more frequently. The government has to spend a huge amount for the disaster management, which increases total expenditure. Modern governments are working for welfare state. Hence, there is a continuous increase in public expenditure. Okay, see last line, very much important. Modern governments are working for welfare state. Hence, there is a continuous increase in the public expenditure. Now, what do you mean by welfare state? With the growth of the concept of welfare state, modern governments have taken upon themselves the responsibility of promoting social welfare and of protecting interest of socially and economically weaker section of the society. Okay, what do you mean by welfare state? With the growth of the concept of welfare state, modern governments have taken upon themselves the responsibility of promoting social welfare and of protecting interest of socially and economically weaker section of the society. Consequently, most of the governments are spending large amounts on providing benefits to people belonging to economically and socially underprivileged section of the society, like sickness benefits, accident benefits, old age pensions, then maternity benefits, outright grants, free medical and educational services for industrial workers, subsidized housing and unemployment benefits, medical and health facilities, etc. The governments have been spending large amounts on these items, and therefore the public expenditure has grown substantially in the 20th century. Okay, the governments have been spending large amounts on these items, and therefore the public expenditure has grown substantially in the 20th century. The elimination of poverty, unemployment, illiteracy, inequality in society, high population rate, this requires collective action, and therefore the government is required to step up, in which has also increased the outlays for public welfare and public works. Over the years, the political and economic problems have become so complex and complicated that they require a large expenditure on social services like education, health and hygiene, medical aid, housing and home administration. Okay, so got it? So now about expected questions. Answer in detail. Explain various reasons for the growth of public expenditure. So students, in today's lecture, we have studied structure of public finance at a glance. In that, meaning of public expenditure, classification of public expenditure, reasons for growth in public expenditure. In the next online lecture, we will go with the next part of chapter number 8. So till then, have a safe time. Thank you.